Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about an older movie, one from 2006, going by the name 300. Zack Snyder made this film back then, and it was a pretty big hit, I must admit. It's a little macho, it's a little manly, it's about a bunch of dudes fighting a war, and it set him up as being this big star director back then, and it also put Gerard Butler, the main actor, on the map as too. This was based on a comic book as well. Frank Miller was the original one that wrote the comic book, and then of course Zack Snyder made the film. Gerard Butler stars as the lead, and it's a pretty good movie. It's an action-packed movie with a lot of special effects. They used a lot of green screen action on this film, like a lot of just like high contrasting photos, lots of cool color. It's set back in time. If you haven't heard, 300 is about this event back in the ancient times. It was this war. There was 300 soldiers who held off like this big giant army because they had a good position and a lot of strong strength. And there's a lot more of the story, but basically we're not here to talk about that so much as we're here to talk about how all of a sudden this movie is now offensive. I don't know where this is coming from specifically. I know I have an article to share with you guys. We're going to talk about why it's not offensive and why they would attack it, of course, but the basic story is, now 14 years later, and this movie's called Offensive and Problematic, and I think we can already guess why. I'm pretty sure it has to do with having lots of macho dudes and being this kind of unabashed, action festival kind of movie, a lot of fighting, a lot of guys being strong, being manly. That's not something that is very favorable, especially to leftists these days. They're very much anti-men acting like men. They're also anti-women acting like women, all kinds of bad stuff like that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get to the specifics in the article real soon, talk about all the details too. But first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. Recently, big Second Amendment cases have not been taken by the Supreme Court. They decided to not look at it anymore, and they said they won't hear any appeals on several cases involving weapons too. This has caused a blow to activists and people who enjoy their Second Amendment, just like me and you. So in order to combat this and show our support for weapon owners, that's why we need to visit our link below this video to check out Beyond Patriots and their great giveaway of their popular Second Amendment coin. For now, you could get them for free just by paying shipping. And all you have to do is click our special link below this video. Hurry up and check out the link and get yourself this beautiful gold coin right now. Thanks for your time, and now back to the show. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about 300 some more. This article from CBR.com has the most weird complaints. It says, Zack Snyder's 300 remains intensely problematic. While 300 is getting a 4K release, it is important to look back at the film and comic critically for the homophobic, racist, and ableist portrayals. Wow, we have a lot of claims right here. It's not just problematic, it's homophobic, racist, and ableist. Wow, this is just a classic SJW pulling out all the stops, just trying to attack something that guys like. It's something that's popular. And apparently what sparked the new conversation is it's getting a 4K release. That means it's getting a new DVD, Blu-ray release with a high definition kind of retouching on it. So I'm sure that's going to look cool. This is a very visual movie. It's like almost like a visual novel kind of like interpreted into movie form. That's basically the premise of it. That's how I saw it. And yeah, it's early on in Zack Snyder's career. This is what led to him being the big star he is today. I know he's a little controversial sometimes. Some people love him or hate him. Depends on who you ask. But yeah, Zack Snyder, I was a big fan of him back then. Before this movie, a couple years before, he started off with the Dawn of the Dead remake, which was pretty good. Then there was 300. Then a few years later, he made Watchmen in 2009. And then he was just off for the races. I mean, by then he's doing awesome. He had a couple other movies that, not hit or miss. Some are good, some are bad. But when he moved on to Superman, that was a pretty good turn. He did Man of Steel, which did pretty well. And Batman v Superman was the next one that was a big profitable movie. That was a questionable movie, though. I know that the critics had a lot of questions about it. It was definitely getting mixed receptions. And then, of course, by the time you get to Justice League, his third DC film that had to be taken over by someone else because he had family problems, he didn't actually finish it. But besides that, that movie turned out awful. You could talk about The Back Room behind the scenes problems all day. But essentially, that's Zack Snyder's career. Pretty inoffensive. And I think the only reason he's getting attacked now is modern PC sensibilities are getting put onto old times. 14 years ago, it might not seem like that long, but this PC culture really didn't come into vogue until like 5 years ago. Like, you were allowed to be like offensive and manly up until 2013 about. So we've only had about 7 years of this kind of terrible left-wing takeover. And that's why things made before 2013 are being come into question. And this is what's happened with 300. So with that said, let's move forward and see what else they say. Director Zack Snyder's 2006 period epic 300, based on the comic series by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley, is receiving a 4K release, which will no doubt reignite the controversy surrounding the film. Snyder employed green screen and staging to directly mirror the panels of the comic, resulting in stunning visuals, which were the primary focus for the positive reviews at the time. However, despite 300's technical and commercial success, reviews overall mixed, with some critics singling out the film's racist, homophobic, and ableist elements. Okay, right out the gate, I want to just point out, this guy is reaching. I mean, I'd never heard about any of this stuff back in 2006. My memory might not serve me 100% right. I know I wasn't as dialed in with this kind of like culture, pop culture, and politics. And in 2006, I was still in school, so I was still in college. But yeah, it wasn't that big a deal back then. Maybe there were a few bad reviews, but this whole idea that it was mixed and this has been going on since it was released, I think that's a rewriting of history. I think really this movie was overall well liked. I think some people didn't like it, but it wasn't because of like racism. It was because, like I said, it's kind of like an action guy kind of movie. It's aimed at dudes. It's about a bunch of soldiers, fighting and stuff like that. So that idea is like just totally bogus. Like, there's no racism in it. This is just a story. There's no homophobia. There's no ableist. This is just throwing out buzzwords from a leftist who's just desperate to tear something down, something popular. Like, they don't like things that are popular, things they don't like. They get a way to call them racist, essentially. The film and the comic are fictionalized accounts of the legendary Battle of Thermopylae, which took place around 480 BC during the Second Persian invasion of Greece. In the battle, 300 Spartan soldiers, led by King Leonidas, held off the Persian army for 3 days in the narrow coastal pass. It's the comic and film's oversimplification of the Spartans and Persians that forms the basis of the narrative's problematic nature. So, yeah, this is where you get quotes like, "This is Sparta." Like, that's why they say those quotes. This is like a world famous movie. It was memed so much back in the day. Like, everyone remembers, like, there were spoofs made about it. Like, 300 was one of the biggest, like, it was a cultural phenomenon. So we need to kind of point that out and really lay that down. And that's like the basis for this criticism. So you got to really admire how big it is and how big of a deal this thing was. And that's why they're coming after it. Like, it was groundbreaking. It was like about this big moment in time. Like, these special effects had never been used in this way before. It looked really cool. It had great action. Like, the actors were all ripped up and looking manly. So that's something that definitely triggers a leftist too. But most of all, it's how famous and popular it was. They can't stand things that are big and monumental in culture. So if they don't have something to do with it, if it's not pandering to them, they're going to attack it. And that's what's happening here. The shocking racism and pro-imperialism of 300 does not exist in a bubble, but it's irresponsible that the film refused to question or investigate the source material's problematic aspects in favor of focusing on capturing the comic's aesthetics. For instance, Snyder's Spartans are a society of white, able-bodied people fueled by aggression and violence, and they are praised as unquestionable heroes. On the other hand, the villains are portrayed as a gender-fluid society that was visibly not white, and the incarnation of evil and treachery. Okay, so this is really weird. This is just the truth of the history. Like, there was a group of white people fighting against a group of Persian people, of brown people, and they're just triggered that the white people are telling the story here and they're making them the heroes. I'm sure there's some fictionalized aspects of it too. I'm sure it's dramatized as things are. Hollywood needs to make it more interesting, make things more dramatic and more fun to watch. So I don't doubt that. But even so, I mean, this was the story. There were 300 of these Spartans fighting against so many Persians, and the guys just triggered that the Spartans won and they're white, and now they're making a movie about it. Like, that's the basis here, is that this writer and the people against this, they're liberals and they hate white people. They hate the idea that white people are starring in this movie. They hate the fact that they're strong, aggressive, confident men. Like, that's another part of it. But I think the whiteness is what's really triggering this guy, and the fact that they beat these villains who were brown Persians. And then he remarks on this whole gender fluid thing, which is another thing that comes from their history. There was different types of sexuality back then. That's what the comic and the story are trying to portray. Like, there were things like that. We know that the Greeks had different views on relationships, as did the Persians, and that's just trying to put a little bit of that flavor into the movie. I don't see that as offensive either. I don't think any of this is. I think this is just a big stretch from a really biased author. 300's depiction of good versus evil is overtly racist by having white be inherently good, while people of color are inherently bad. It also reinforces the growing untrue notion that foreigners entering a white country are to be feared and attacked. Harmful representation like that can support the false notion that it's right to fear immigrants, especially immigrants of color. The film's harmful depiction of race promotes the idea that racist ideologies like this are a way to protect a morally superior way of life. Okay, again, he's just mad because the white people are the heroes and the good guys in this movie. Like, why can't white people be good guys? I don't get that. Like, what's wrong with telling a story where this white country fights against a brown country? Like, that happens. We've done that throughout history. Like, it's happened all the time. It doesn't imply racism. It's just people in this area look different than people in this area. When we fought a war with Japan in World War II, we had two different sides and people look different. Sometimes you fight people that look the same, like in that same World War II when we fought the Germans, they look pretty similar to Americans. Like, we're all kind of European descendant white people. Like, that happens as well. But in this story, we're talking about 300. We're talking about Spartans versus Persians, talking about the Greeks who are white, Persians who are brown or Middle Eastern. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, this isn't even saying it's racist. Like, there's just happened to be two colors, and this guy is mad that the white guys are kind of the favored heroes of this story. If they were reversed, do you think you would get mad? That's the question you should really ask. It's like, if they were reversed, would that be racist too? And I highly doubt that. Like, you don't think you would hear that. Like, if the Persians were the heroes and this movie was told from the other angle in some way, or they told another story, like, it wouldn't be offensive. But for some reason, if white people are the heroes, that's racist. And really what that's showing is liberals are racist against white people. Furthermore, 300 Spartans, the heroes of the narrative, are from a military-based society that promotes violence, aggression, and fascism. However, the film frames this society as a free democracy. In combination with the above-noted anti-Middle East sentiment, this feeds into a warped notion of patriotism that prides itself on xenophobia and racism. Now this guy is just going off the charts. Like, he's just totally lost the whole premise. I think we've already debunked all their claims. It's not racist. It's not homophobic. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's just a story that happens to have two different groups of people facing off. It's actually based on a true story too. So, I mean, the fact that they want to just rewrite history is pretty messed up. They want this movie, like, it's implying they want this movie to change and make the Greeks black or something, like make the Persians white. I don't understand what this guy's going for. I think really it's just about complaining, and it's about attacking something that's very popular and something that was groundbreaking in the movie scene at the time. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the like if you enjoyed this video, and also check out our second channel, NoBS News. Until next time, have a great day.